I think a lot of the myths have been blown away in the last 20 years.
For my opinion, the myths out there are that some boats just rate better and they're always going to win. And in my experience, the boats that always win are the boats that sail the best.
There's a lot of myths out there as far as IRC burglars, but generally they're just boats well sailed and well maintained.
So I think there's this myth. I think one of the myths is that you need a French production boat to do well. Yeah, not the case. You look at the results worldwide.
Probably the biggest one is that two boats are all going to be identical and have the same rating. So that's really difficult to achieve. Every boat has its little nuances and differences, and that will be reflected in the measurement. And also that measuring is an exact science.
The myths, I guess some of the myths are that in certain lengths you have a rating advantage, let's say. So for instance, Transpec 52 might have a sweet spot within the IRC rule. There is to some extent a myth that that's the case, but it's a real myth. There's sweet spots in lots of rules. It's just how it is.
No.
Generally not, shouldn't do.
I wouldn't know. Your performance changes your performance handicap.
It should be independent to some extent until the yacht club catches up with your performance handicap. Yacht soft will get you in the end.
I think they're completely separate.
By its very nature, a performance handicap is a bit of a fiddle. They only let you win one race per year.
Yeah, that's
If there's a fleet of 50 boats, basically.
There's two designs. There's currently the Beneteau 45s and the Adams 10s that do very well under the rating systems, but I would suggest it's because they've got very good crew. There might be 10 Adams 10s on Port Phillip Bay. 8 out of the 10 are always in the bottom end of the fleet under IRC, and the top 2 would be in the top 3 or 4 boats. So I think it's crew rather than boat.
They appear to, but I don't believe they do.
They can do, depending on how your races are organised. So you want to make sure that you have a broad range of different sailing conditions and courses, so that every different type of boat has an equal chance out on the race course. So if you're only doing windward lewards, that's going to favour windward leeward boats that are designed for windward leeward conditions. But if you've got a broad spectrum of race conditions out there, then it should be a fairer playing field.
I think over the years we've seen a lot of this with Beneteaus, but in the longer term, I think the rating system catches up.
The rating system has to rate a wide variety of boats over a wide variety of sea and weather conditions. So what will happen is that in a particular, possibly in a particular geographical area or a particular area where there's a certain prevailing weather pattern or a particular race, whether it's upwind or downwind, that a particular boat or boats will be favoured.
Yeah.
So
Depending on the type of races they do as well.
So you might find in some areas there is a bandit, but the same boat in a different part of the world is an also ran. So I think it's just horses for courses, and that's part of the decision that's part of the investment decision of the boat that you buy. Do your homework and work out what goes well, what you think will go well in your area, if you want to be competitive.
Yeah.
Again, that's a size-dependent thing, and also the rating style, whether it's IRC or ORC. To some extent, IRC does have sweet spots within the rule for particular lengths, and they make no the fact that that's not the case. Sub 40 feet might have a few issues with lighter yachts, for instance, and the more favoured, heavier displacement length ratio yachts will be favoured. ORC is a different kettle of fish because it's a VPP-based rule, rated on performance.
With IRC, our view is that the type form is always pushed more towards the the general purpose boat, something like a racer cruiser, cruiser racer. Everyone's idea of what a racer is different, but basically it's the kind of boat that you can, that's got an afterlife after it's gone racing.
You can have an old, very good design boat and a new, rather poorly designed boat. So you will definitely have some major differences there. You cannot hold an old, well-designed, well-sailed boat down. Boats that spring to mind might be Love and War, it's still winning Hobarts and so forth. So a lot of it comes down to your design.
We've got to make sure, accept the fact that it's tight forming, but make sure you concentrate on making that tight form something that's a good boat.
Yes, there are boats which have been purpose designed and built to be optimised under a rating system, and both the IRC and the ORC can be optimised too in that way to varying degrees. Only in the very unlikely event that they're completely identical in all measured respects. So, for example, two Sydney 38s will probably have slightly differing ratings under both ORC and IRC because no two boats are ever truly alike in all respects.
Good example, S80s. S80s are a one design. S80s range in displacement from 1,600 kilos to 2,200 kilos.
Not necessarily, no. Two boats that come out of the same mould will be different. They will weigh a different amount. Your rig, your sails will be slightly different over time. So there will be differences in your rating.
No.
Similar, but it can be different. Sail
Yeah.
wardrobe, weight.
Yeah.
Hot water system and extra house batteries will add a couple of points to, or take a couple of points off. Smaller sails, bigger sails.
Well, I guess if they're exactly the same to the nearest millimetre, to the nearest kilogram, and to the nearest everything else, then they're essentially a one design vessel. But the reality is, all production yachts are different. It doesn't matter if they're out of the same mould or not; they'll all be slightly different.
Well, over my 50 years, I've never found two boats to be identical. You might have two far 40s, but the fit out will be different. Someone's taken doors and tables out. So the differences in ratings will definitely be there. They shouldn't, and rightly so, they shouldn't be exactly the same, but modifications like that exist, one boat to the other.
Each boat's an individual boat.
And we're just talking about boats. I mean, you haven't even touched on the issues of spars and sails. So these issues all come into it. They're not one-class designs like Etchells, and they definitely need to be handled somewhat differently.